The morning sun peeked shyly over the gleaming towers of New Avalon, its warm rays casting a golden hue across the skyline, when Leila Castellanos' alarm pierced the tranquil silence at precisely 6:30 a.m. Outside, the city was slowly coming to life, the sounds of distant traffic blending with the gentle rustle of leaves in the warm breeze. Though Layla had a crucial 9 a.m. appointment scheduled at the courthouse, a time that meant everything in her demanding profession, she was not the type to cut things close or leave matters to chance. Years of dedication and an unwavering commitment to justice as a federal prosecutor had honed her instinct for meticulous planning and preparation. Her mornings were a well-rehearsed ritual, each moment counted and accounted for as she set out to face a day rife with legal challenges. As she swung her legs over the side of her bed, the soft plush carpet greeted her feet, a small luxury in her otherwise driven life. Her apartment, nestled in the heart of the bustling city, mirrored her organized spirit and served as both sanctuary and command center. The walls were adorned with framed photographs capturing moments of triumph and laughter with colleagues and friends, and the air was filled with the subtle scent of fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. Case files, meticulously curated and lining her home office shelves, stood as a testament to her tireless work ethic, while legal books lay stacked neatly, their spines perfectly aligned. In her bedroom, her attire for the day lay meticulously folded on her chair, an elegant navy blazer paired with a crisp white blouse and tailored slacks, all chosen for both style and authority. She took a moment to admire the outfit before slipping it on, a ritual that imbued her with confidence. It was more than just clothing. It was armor for the courtroom, a way to assert her presence and credibility. As she made her way to the kitchen to pour herself a cup of coffee, Layla mentally reviewed her schedule, her mind racing through her to-do list. She considered the case at hand, mentally rehearsing her arguments and anticipating the questions she might face. Each sip of coffee fueled her determination. She was ready to face whatever challenges awaited her in the courtroom, armed with both knowledge and passion for justice. Time ticked away, and Layla knew she needed to stay on track. There was no room for complacency in her line of work, and today was no exception. Each step she took, from the routine of preparing breakfast to reviewing her notes one last time, solidified her resolve. The city outside began to pulse with energy, just as she did, ready to take on the world. Today was going to be a pivotal day, and Layla Castellanos was prepared to make her mark. Today, however, was not like other days. Instead of the stately federal courthouse, with its grand pillars and polished marble floors, she would find herself at the municipal court, a place where she rarely stepped foot. The bustling corridors of that court always seemed to echo with the chatter of everyday citizens, each grappling with their own legal predicaments, in stark contrast to the more formal atmosphere of her usual setting. A parking ticket dispute, of all things, had called her away from her usual battles of legal might, an ironic twist for someone accustomed to advocating for high-stakes cases that often defined her career. Layla chose to dress more casually than her usual power suits that exuded confidence and authority. This time, she opted for a tailored navy blazer that hugged her figure just right, lending an air of professionalism without the formidable weight of her typical attire. Underneath, she wore a crisp white blouse that contrasted sharply with the deep hue of her jacket, its simplicity serving as a canvas for her poised demeanor. Black slacks completed her outfit, striking the perfect balance between comfort and style, ensuring she could navigate the day with ease. Her curly hair, a recent declaration of her cultural pride and identity, was neatly swept back, framing her face and allowing her features to shine. Each curl told a story, a testament to the heritage she cherished and the journey she had undertaken to embrace her roots fully. As she looked in the mirror one last time before heading out, she reminded herself of the importance of this day, not just in terms of the ticket dispute, but also as an opportunity to connect with the community and reassert her presence in a landscape where she usually held little sway. Today, amidst the mundane nature of a parking ticket, Layla was ready to engage with the very system she often fought against, embracing a different kind of legal challenge. At the age of 35, Layla had not only made a name for herself, but had also expertly navigated the complexities of the legal world, ultimately ascending to a prominent position within the U.S. Attorney's Office. Her journey had been marked by a series of challenging cases, long hours, and a relentless pursuit of justice that earned her the respect, and sometimes envy, of her colleagues. It was a remarkable feat that often left onlookers gaping, especially when they caught sight of her luxurious Mercedes parked outside the courthouse. The gleaming car stood as a testament to her hard work, dedication, and numerous triumphs along her career path. As she maneuvered through the bustling morning traffic, Layla took a moment to savor the aroma of her coffee, the warmth of the cup nestled comfortably in her hand. The familiar sounds of the morning news filled her car's interior, providing a backdrop to her thoughts. However, her mind wasn't solely focused on the day ahead. A lingering sense of annoyance tugged at her as she reflected on the inconvenience caused by the ticket she had received the day before. It seemed so trivial in the grand scope of her life, yet it irked her nonetheless. A small reminder that even those who have achieved significant success can encounter minor setbacks that disrupt their carefully orchestrated routines. As she sipped her coffee and navigated the labyrinth of idling cars and impatient drivers, Layla resolved not to let this small annoyance overshadow her aspirations or the important work she had set out to accomplish that day. At precisely 8:15 a.m., as the early morning sunlight streamed through the car windows, Layla sat in the driver's seat, ready to begin her day. Just as she was about to shift into gear, the unmistakable chime of her car's Bluetooth system resonated through the cabin, announcing an incoming call. To her surprise, the caller ID displayed her boss's name, none other than the U.S. Attorney himself. She felt a quickening of her pulse. Conversations with him were usually significant. As she accepted the call, his voice crackled to life over the speakers, a mix of urgency and professionalism layered in his tone. "Layla," he began, his words carrying the weight of importance. "I'm sorry to interrupt your morning, but I need to discuss the Castor case with you. It has taken an unexpected turn." Her interest piqued, Layla leaned a bit closer to the steering wheel, her mind swiftly shifting gears from the mundane morning routine to the high-stakes world of legal drama. "The defense has filed a motion," he continued, his voice tinged with concern, "and it could potentially throw everything off track. We might be facing serious complications if we don't address this immediately. Can you take a look at the details and prepare for a possible response?" Layla knew the significance of this case. It had been the focal point of intense media scrutiny and public interest for months. It involved allegations that sparked debates on ethics and justice, gripping the attention of the entire nation. Her heart raced as she acknowledged the challenge ahead. "Absolutely. I'll review it as soon as possible," she replied, her mind already racing with thoughts of research, strategy, and the implications of the defense's latest move. As the call ended, she fired up the engine and pulled out into the bustling morning traffic, her thoughts consumed by the case. Time was of the essence, and she had no intention of letting the team down. The stakes were high, and she was determined to ensure that justice prevailed. The Castor case had quickly transformed into a monumental human trafficking trial, one that could potentially define Layla's career and elevate her to a whole new level of professional recognition. As she sat in her car, her heart skipped a beat, a mix of excitement and anxiety coursing through her veins. She understood intuitively that her meticulously laid plans were about to be completely reshaped by the significance of the proceedings. This was not just another case, it was a pivotal moment that could set the course of her future in the legal field. Feeling the urgency build, Layla maneuvered her way into a spot in the parking lot of a quaint little cafe that had become her refuge during such chaotic times. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the open window, but she had no time to indulge. With determination, she pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys as she plunged into the dense legal labyrinth of the defense's argument. Each detail was vital, each precedent a potential key to unlocking the mysteries of the case. As the clock ticked mercilessly towards 9 a.m., it approached with the stealth of a cat burglar, leaving Layla acutely aware of how little time she had left. She sat surrounded by a sea of her notes, highlighters, and legal briefs scattered around her like fallen leaves. The weight of the case pressed down on her shoulders, raising the stakes of her preparation. With a deep sigh, she reluctantly reached for her phone and dialed her boss's number once again, knowing that her immediate hope lay within that conversation. "Hey, it's Layla," she said, striving for a calm tone despite the whirlwind inside her. She succinctly provided her analysis of the defense team's arguments, detailing the critical points that could shape their strategy moving forward. She assured her boss that a full and comprehensive report would be ready as soon as they navigated through the ticket fiasco that had threatened to derail her morning. The call was brief but necessary, and she ended it with a renewed focus, ready to tackle the intricate challenges that lay ahead in the courtroom. 9:10 a.m. The air was thick with tension as Layla rushed into the municipal court, her heels producing a rhythmic echo that reverberated off the polished marble floor. Each step felt like a drum roll, announcing her late arrival to everyone present. The clerk, caught off guard, glanced up from her paperwork, her eyes widened in surprise. Layla could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up her neck. She knew she had to act fast to salvage this day. Judge William Fairweather, a man renowned not only for his rigorous adherence to the schedule, but also for his unwavering sense of justice, was not someone who appreciated being kept waiting. As she scanned the courtroom, Layla took in the diverse tapestry that made up the audience, a microcosm of New Avalon. The air was alive with the low murmurs of early morning disputes as individuals from various backgrounds sat together, some fidgeting with anticipation, while others whispered quietly among themselves about the day's proceedings. The atmosphere was thick with the weight of their concerns, reflecting a community that was both vibrant and fractured. Layla's heart raced as she finally spotted Judge Fairweather seated at the elevated bench, his imposing figure radiating authority. With a stern, penetrating gaze, he surveyed the room, his eyes making brief contact with Layla as she approached the podium. In that moment, she felt the full force of his scrutiny, which seemed to peel back the layers of her hurried facade. With every ounce of composure she could muster, she reminded herself of the importance of the case she was about to present. Today wasn't just about her, it was about the very essence of justice. As she reached the podium, Layla took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. She had worked long and hard to prepare for this moment, and she knew that despite her late entrance, she needed to make every second count. The murmurs in the courtroom faded into the background as she focused on the task at hand, determined to capture the attention of not only Judge Fairweather, but also the diverse audience who represented the fabric of her community. "Miss Castellanos," he boomed, his voice resonating throughout the courtroom, each syllable punctuated with authority as his gavel struck the polished wood with a sharp smack. The sharp sound echoed off the walls, drawing the attention of everyone present, all eyes immediately fixed on her. "Do you understand the importance of punctuality in a court of law?" Layla stood firm, her posture unwavering even under the weight of his gaze. She took a moment to collect her thoughts, ensuring her voice would convey both respect and conviction. "I do, Your Honor," she replied, her tone steady and resolute. The judge narrowed his eyes slightly, his brow furrowing as he leaned in closer, creating an almost palpable tension in the air. The room around them seemed to contract, the walls closing in as he continued. "Then why?" he asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet laced with undeniable intensity. "Do you think your time is more valuable than the court's?" The question hung heavily in the air, laden with implications that resonated beyond the immediate moment. Layla felt the weight of his scrutiny, the expectation for an explanation. In that charged silence, she knew she had to respond carefully, balancing the gravity of the situation with her own truth. The eyes of the entire courtroom bore down on her, the spectators, attorneys, and even the jury all waiting to understand her reasoning. With her heart racing, she prepared to articulate her thoughts, knowing that her response could shape the outcome of the hearing. The accusation stung deeply, reverberating through her mind like the sharp echo of a bell, but she knew, with a heavy weight in her chest, that this moment was not truly about her as an individual. She had faced prejudice before, more times than she could count, each encounter leaving its mark on her spirit. This, however, was different. It was a blatant display of power, a stark reminder of the inequalities that persisted in the system she once hoped would be fair and impartial. "Your Honor, if I may explain," she started, her voice steady despite the rising tumult in her heart, determined to articulate her side of the story and shine a light on the injustice she was enduring. "I don't need your excuses," he interrupted, his voice booming across the courtroom, silencing her like a thunderclap. The words struck her with the force of a knife, sharp and unforgiving, leaving no room for her to defend herself or to present the truth that lay beneath the accusation. "You are hereby fined $500 for contempt of court." Gasps echoed throughout the room, a collective intake of breath that filled the air with disbelief and outrage. The fine was exorbitant, a hefty sum that felt punitive rather than just, and the palpable sense of injustice hung in the air like a dark cloud, thick and suffocating. Mrs. Castellanos, the court clerk, glanced nervously at the judge, her brow furrowed with concern as her fingers trembled over the keyboard. It was clear to her that this wasn't just a routine procedure. Something deeper and more sinister was at play. The sum she typed appeared to quiver on the screen, reflecting the weight of the decision and the painful reality of the day. It was an act of authority that seemed to disregard her humanity, standing in direct opposition to the principles of justice that the courtroom purported to uphold. As the day unfolded, the sun's rays poured into Layla's apartment, casting long shadows across the walls, but within her, a storm of frustration began to brew. What initially felt like a mere inconvenience, a parking ticket, a trivial nuisance, slowly morphed into something much more profound. This was not just about the fine written on an unassuming piece of paper. It represented a much deeper issue, a glaring inadequacy in a system that permitted such overt bias to thrive unchecked. The reality struck her. This was a reflection of a culture that allowed inequality to permeate the lives of its citizens, revealing cracks in the very foundation of justice. With a fire igniting in her chest, Layla gathered her evidence meticulously, combing through the paperwork and digital records. Each piece of information she gathered felt like another brick in the wall of her resolve. This wasn't merely an academic exercise in pointing out a flaw. It was a rallying cry, an opportunity to illuminate the injustices that so many had silently endured. For too long, voices like hers had been muffled in the face of authority, and she was no longer willing to be another statistic, another casualty of systemic bias. When she rose from her desk, her heart raced with a mix of anxiety and adrenaline. She set out, not just to address her individual grievance, but with a newfound purpose, to challenge a narrative that had cast so many into the shadows. Layla's investigation quickly transcended its humble beginnings. She networked with community members who had faced similar unfair treatment, delving deep into the intricacies of local policies and statistics. Collaborating with activists and legal experts, she began to piece together a comprehensive overview of the systemic issues at play. Much to her surprise, her efforts soon took a life of their own, as if the universe had conspired to help her mission gain momentum. The story of Layla Castellanos transformed from that of an anonymous individual within the labyrinth of the new Avalon legal system into a powerful symbol of hope and tenacity for all those who had experienced similar injustices. Her name became synonymous with empowerment, rallying people from all walks of life to join her cause. She found herself at the forefront of a burgeoning movement, compelling individuals and groups to reassess their stance on bias and advocacy. Through her investigation and her unyielding spirit, Layla had stumbled upon a systemic flaw far more significant than she had ever anticipated. A flaw that ran like a thread through the fabric of societal institutions. She made a pact with herself. She was not going to let this issue lie dormant or fade into obscurity. Instead, she would use her voice, her passion, and her evidence to spark conversations, raise awareness, and advocate for change. With every step she took, she knew that she was not just fighting for herself, but for countless others whose stories had been silenced and overlooked. Her journey was just beginning, but with her unwavering determination, she felt an electric sense of purpose propelling her forward into uncharted territory, ready to challenge the status quo and ignite a revolution of awareness and reform. The wheels of justice began to turn in her favor, slowly at first, but with an undeniable momentum that was building. The media, ever vigilant and hungry for stories that resonated with the public, picked up the narrative surrounding her case. Headlines blared, articles delved deep into the details, and social media buzzed with opinions and outrage, casting Judge William Fairweather in a harsh and unflattering light. Once revered for his legal acumen and authority, the judge's reputation now bore the tarnish of perceived prejudice and bias that had been unveiled during the trial. The courtroom that day had been more than just a venue for legal proceedings. It had transformed into a theater of injustice, a stage where the harsh realities of inequality and systemic flaws were laid bare for all to see. As the trial unfolded, it became evident to onlookers that something was amiss, an undercurrent of partiality that was impossible to ignore. But in the midst of this agonizing spectacle, a flicker of hope emerged. What had initially seemed like a heartbreaking defeat evolved into a catalyst for change. As more and more members of the public became aware of the injustices that had transpired within those four walls, the whispers in the community grew louder. The disgruntled conversations at coffee shops turned into debates at town halls, igniting a fire of activism. Emails flooded inboxes, citizens reaching out to their representatives and demanding accountability, making it clear that they would no longer tolerate blind eyes turned towards prejudice. Soon, the cogs of the judicial machine, long accustomed to a certain way of operating, could feel the mounting pressure of an awakened citizenry. The collective cries for reform became impossible to overlook. They echoed through the halls of power, reverberating with calls for a legal system that was fair, just, and truly representative of the values it purported to uphold. In this evolving narrative, not just her fate was at stake, but the very fabric of the justice system itself. The wheels of justice, once turned with a heavy, unyielding force, were now beginning to pivot, guided by the collective will of those who had witnessed the inequities unfold. This shift marked the beginning of an awakening, an urgent demand for transparency and the reassessment of values that lay at the heart of law and order. What had been a solitary battle was transforming into a movement as more voices joined in solidarity, each one pushing for a reformation that promised to create a more equitable future for all. Layla's case was not merely an isolated incident revolving around a parking ticket. It had escalated into a significant battleground for equality, a clash of principles that transcended the mundane parameters of municipal law. What had initially seemed like a trivial infraction had transformed into a pivotal moment, illuminating the systemic injustices that often lay hidden beneath the surface of the justice system. Layla devoted herself wholeheartedly to this cause, embarking on a tireless mission to gather testimonies, compile crucial data, and unearth the underlying biases that had tainted her experience. She reached out to community members, seeking their stories of similar injustices, and diligently pieced together a compelling narrative that could no longer be ignored. As Layla's efforts snowballed, the very foundation of the institution she had once admired began to tremble under the weight of her revelations. The city, once oblivious to the quiet struggles of its citizens, stood captivated as the case unfolded. The media flocked to the story, and soon it became a topic of heated debate within public forums and city hall meetings. People from all walks of life began to question the authority of those who were supposed to enforce the law fairly. They rallied behind Layla, voicing their support and demanding accountability, creating a powerful tide of change that washed over the community. In an atmosphere thick with anticipation and tension, Judge Fairweather found himself in the spotlight, facing a tribunal of his peers as they evaluated his actions and decisions in light of the evidence that Layla had painstakingly gathered. Once a commanding figure whose authority evoked respect and fear, his voice now wavered, betraying the discomfort he felt as he grappled with the undeniable evidence of his own biases. The courtroom, which had long functioned as a bastion of his power and prestige, now became a stage where the harsh light of scrutiny revealed the flaws in his convictions, inviting a collective reckoning with uncomfortable truths. Every glance exchanged within the courtroom seemed heavy with implications. The walls that had witnessed countless cases echoed with the urgency of this moment. It was no longer just about Layla's parking ticket. It was about holding the powerful accountable and reclaiming the narrative of justice for those who had been silenced for too long. The atmosphere crackled with tension as the community held its breath, awaiting a verdict that would not only affect Layla's future, but could also herald a transformative shift in the way justice was administered in their city. The mirror had been held up to Judge Fairweather's soul, and as the tribunal continued, it became evident that the outcome would resonate far beyond this case, potentially igniting a movement for equality and change that had long been overdue. In the end, it was not the law that brought him down, but rather the crushing weight of his own actions. The choices he had made, the ethical lines he had crossed, and the trust he had breached all culminated in his resignation, a moment both humbling and humiliating. It served as a stark reminder to all that even those who seemed most entrenched in power could indeed fall from grace, no matter how secure they appeared to be in their positions. From the ashes of that tumultuous morning, a phoenix of change arose, symbolizing the hope and resolve of a community ready to reclaim its integrity. In the wake of his departure, new policies were swiftly implemented to prevent similar abuses of power in the future. Comprehensive training was mandated for all personnel, instilling a renewed commitment to ethical conduct and accountability. A new sense of fairness, long absent, began to sweep through the courts, reshaping not only the practices of those who worked within them, but also the perceptions of the wider public. The name Castellanos transformed from a mere name associated with controversy into a powerful symbol of resilience and the promise of reform. Meanwhile, the young legal mind who had been inspired by Layla's courageous stand against injustice found her voice amidst this shifting landscape. She grew into a fierce advocate, her passion ignited by the events that had unfolded. Her weekly lectures at the law school became a beacon, drawing enthusiastic crowds, eager to learn and engage in discussions about justice, equity, and the law's role in society. Her powerful and articulate words echoed through the hallowed halls, instilling a sense of urgency and purpose. Students who once felt disillusioned or powerless began to envision themselves as agents of change, motivated to fight for a more just world. This burgeoning movement, fueled by their collective idealism, marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised to reshape the future of the legal landscape for generations to come. The courthouse walls whispered tales of transformation, each crack and crevice etched with the history of struggles fought and victories won. Here, in this venerable institution where justice was both served and sought, the air was thick with the stories of those who had come before, stories of heartache, resilience, and ultimately change. Judge Layla Castellanos, a former clerk who had once toiled diligently in the shadows, now stood as a beacon of hope and a champion of change. With her keen eye surveying the hallowed halls, she ensured that all who entered felt the warmth of equity, a sanctuary where fairness reigned and every voice carried weight. Amidst the bustling heart of the city, a momentous event unfolded as a plaque was unveiled, gleaming under the sunlight like a clarion call for justice. It stood as a powerful testament to all who sought solace within the courthouse's walls. Engraved with care, the plaque bore the date of that fateful morning, one that would be etched in the collective memory of New Avalon. In simple yet impactful words, it proclaimed a profound truth. Justice is blind, but it is we who must open our eyes. This reminder served as a rallying cry for all who walked through those doors, urging them to challenge the rigid structures of injustice and to awaken their consciousness. Layla Castellanos had not set out to topple giants. Her journey began with the desire to rectify a small, personal wrong that had long lingered in her mind, a quiet injustice that stirred her soul. Yet, armed with unwavering determination and a passion for fairness, she found herself confronting the far more insidious and pervasive giant of systemic prejudice. Through her courageous actions, she quickly evolved into a formidable force, a modern-day David engaged in a fierce battle against Goliath. With each case she fervently championed, her courage sparked a revolution, one that rippled through the streets of New Avalon and inspired others to rise and join the movement. As the news of her victories spread, they ignited a fervor within the hearts of the citizens, who rallied together to demand accountability and advocate for those voiceless and marginalized. From the youngest school children to the oldest residents of the city, the message resonated. Change is not just possible, it is essential. The courthouse, once merely a structure of law, became a crucible of hope and activism, pulsating with the energy of those who dared to dream of a more just society. Judge Castellanos stood at the forefront of this movement, her presence a testament to the power one individual can wield when fueled by the flames of conviction. In this indomitable spirit of collective action, New Avalon found not only its voice, but its heart, pulsing with the promise of a brighter future. A future where justice would not merely be a concept, but a lived reality, rooted in the shared commitment to open our eyes and embrace the truth.